Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta, and I am the Quiet Warrior. And I'm just reaching here. We're in studio live across Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. We're going to turn the bumper music on and have a little fun here.
Welcome to the
I don't
Quiet
talk about my
Warrior
bumper
Show,
music too
where
much,
we
everybody, but I'll tell you
uncover
this morning because I have a special guest on. He's making me do crazy things. When I produced this, there's 7 layers of music on it, and I told the
Tom
guy who
Dutta,
did it,
the Quiet Warrior.
I said, hey, I grew up listening to heavy metal, which I did, heavy metal. I was kind of a lost sheep in that time. And my friend Alan Chesky, who I used to file tax returns at the Surrey Tax Center, and we would go there after school, and he put a headset on me back then. If you remember Walkmans, I'm dating myself, and well, he put Iron Maiden on. I said, whoa, and I loved it. So when I had the bumper music produced, everybody, I said to the guy, does it? He's a DJ. I said, I want to have heavy metal in there. I want to have so many layers. And he said, Tom, he said the final product has 7 layers of mix in it. He said, I've never done something like that. So, hey, I hope you like it, everybody. Well, enough about me. Today is Chris M. Wilson 2.0. And well, we were on just a few days ago, and I'm just gonna be vulnerable. And there it is, good looking dude. And March 6th, and we had a catastrophic failure with my sound. That's all on me, not Chris. But I discovered some things about Chris that I didn't produce into the last show. And we're bringing that into today's episode. We're going to go maybe up to an hour. So hold on to your seats. This will be produced into a future podcast that will be international and also across a YouTube premiere. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel, Tom Dutta. We're trying to grow the audience there so we can do more of this. And when the podcast comes out, let's honor Chris and subscribe to that. Let me tell you a bit about Chris, and I'll bring him on the screen. He's in the green room. Chris is originally from Barrie, Ontario. So I'm in Vancouver, and if you know British Columbia, Ontario's the other side of the country, and beautiful place. He moved here in 2009 at the age of 18 by himself. Curious. He knew earlier on that he wanted to pursue an adventurous, dynamic, and different career. Oh, yeah. Previously, a commercial helicopter pilot, aircraft maintenance engineer, helicopter expert. Every time I think about Chris here, my dad was a helicopter technician in the Army. So I'd like him to fly me sometime. Chris switched gears in 2022 to run his online career coaching business full time. And he's forward thinking. He's an entrepreneur. He's got 2 books. We're going to talk about one today. We're going to get him to show us those if he has it with us. And I like what he does in his spare time. He does things like scuba diving, snowboarding, riding his motorcycle. You get in the picture here. This guy's a total package. He likes to have fun. So we'll bring him on the screen now. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me for the second time already this week.
Yeah.
So we're getting good practice.
Yeah, 2.0. I put the ball cap on today because I'm so comfortable with you. Actually, everybody, I have a little bit of sensitivity light, so it's shade that, so I'm not being disrespectful. But welcome to the show. This is all about what I call the hero's journey. So we're talking about really the journey you took in time from the beginning. So I want to tell the audience, everybody, that we're going to do a bit of a fun show where we're going to start with the journey, go back in time, and we're going to get into the turning point in the road where he created this lifestyle and this new, well, I call it a career, and what's that all about, and how is he changing the world with that? So, Chris, I just want to say that when I asked you to come on the show, I challenged you with a question. What are your big gut punches, challenges that got you to where you are? You remember that question, and you sent me an email. Do you remember doing that?
Yeah, the question it all started, around age 14 when I first entered the workforce. So I was kind of hungry early on. My parents, were 2 kind of blue collar workers, and they always pushed me to, work hard, earn your income. So at 14, I decided to start working, and I was actually assistant ski instructor. So I always wanted to have work and play and work and passion kind of in the same aspect, so to speak. So it wasn't just a boring job that I was doing, but something fun, something I like doing outside, adventurous. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what kicked off my journey was, 14, then working as a ski instructor. Then when high school kind of hit, working at a hardware store. And I kind of grew up, working on weekends, on nights. And that was a big part of my life because I could earn some extra income, to do fun things on the side, as well as, build skills like discipline and sacrifice.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't want to interrupt you there because it's such a good story. But inside, I'm going like 14. Whoa, dude! And you know, people are connected by threads. I think I was riding a 10-speed bike up and down hills, delivering the Vancouver province to 150 houses when I was like 12. And then I'm thinking about, man, the 14 is a really young age to be working or, you know, starting out like that.
Yeah.
Uh, in the background here, if you can see it, there's a guitar, and beside is a replica of a brain. And I just want to let the audience know that in neuroscience, Chris, that up until age 25, you don't have the frontal lobe active. So really, you can't rationalize or really make adult decisions. So you go out and you start working at 14. And so I'm very interested in that. Tell me about your upbringing with your parents and your childhood, because that tends to shape us. What were your parents like? What, you know, how did they treat you? What were their beliefs? What did they do?
Yeah, so my parents, my dad worked for Bell Canada as a manager for about 25 years. My mom was a teacher, teaching, young students, kindergartens, mostly grade one, two, three for her entire career. So they kind of grew up in the era where you get, one job and you do that job for 30 plus years, 40 years, you raise your family and, such is life and you move on. So that was kind of, I want to say, the end of that era, so to speak, or more or less. It's a lot more dynamic now. But I mean, all in all, I had, a great childhood with my parents and stuff. Like I said, I was raised to kind of, understand the importance of working hard and kind of earning your way was definitely paved kind of in my DNA.
Yeah.
Both my parents are, very hardworking, but, they also like to enjoy their time. They also like to have fun. They also like to, make sure that we're getting experiences with family and friends and, going on the odd vacation if possible to kind of enjoy that quality time with each other. So overall, it was a great experience, but they taught me at that early age that, you have to work for this if you want it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you know, I live vicariously through you. You know a little bit about my background, and I was, you know, sort of without a home at age 12. My parents split. My dad drank a lot and things like that, and I found I had to go out in the world and find, you know, somebody to nurture me and teach me. I'm always interested when I meet a guy like you, because you know, you have, as you tell the story, your parents treated you well and whatnot, and you know, going back to neuroscience, I always think about the beliefs. And so you said something interesting. They taught me to work hard. There are some people, in fact, I was just talking to a gentleman yesterday that I do some work with, who has trouble being a workaholic, and because all that's wired in him is, you know, you got to be good, you got to be responsible, you got to work hard. And we track that back to innocently his parents being the example of that. You seem to be different. You seem to sort of be a guy who can play hard and work and set some balance. So tell me about that. How did that shape you? Because you seem to have it all in good shape.
Yeah. So in terms of, basically I moved out on my own at 18. And I think that was kind of one of the number one things that determined that is, I went from Barrie, Ontario, about 4,000 kilometers to Vancouver, BC. And I went all by myself. So there was, my parents didn't come out with me. I have two older brothers. They didn't come with me. No
That's a big
family, no
adjustment, man.
friends. Yeah, no contacts at all. So I think, that transition alone kind of was an indicator or, built the momentum for me to be, responsible, me to, kind of step up and be an individual right away, because it was sink or swim for me. So, I mean, it wasn't always in balance, so to speak. During the earlier, parts of my career and schooling, I was out of balance for sure and working extremely long days. I mean, I've done 14, 16-hour days. I'm pretty sure I've even done some 18-hour days there for many, many weeks and months straight. So it was out of balance, but kind of the more experience I got and the further I got, in my career, I could kind of start saying no to more things and creating more of a good lifestyle overall.
Yeah, I love it. Wow, those are long hours, man. It sounds like a lot of the people you coach who are burn out, and you know they don't like their job. Hey, I'm one of those that came from an executive career. I'm just reading something here, everybody, off my other monitor. He said he just wrote that letter to me, and he says, I think the main reason I ended up in such a painful situation before returning home was a lack of experience. I had good intentions, passion, doing what I love. I was young and inexperienced. That's what we just heard you say. Aviation was looking for pilots, 1,000 hours. I only had 100. Lack of knowledge, poor financial intelligence added to it. I didn't know any difference between living paycheck to paycheck or not. Being in debt was the only way I could go to school, pursue this avenue. So unfortunately, it was part of this journey. Being 18, 4,000 kilometers away from home, having no idea what I was doing was tough, leads to some key qualities in my life, such as responsibility, discipline, and sacrifice. So let's jump in there to the story. So, I know when you hear it, your brain relives it. So you're high in debt. Tell us how much debt you had, and then you're 18, and it's like, what the hell do I do now? The bank account's dry, macaroni and cheese or whatever. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I was 17 turning on 18, when I graduated from high school, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. So what I did with that year is I took a gap year and I worked full time at the hardware store I was working at to figure out, what is this next thing? What's this next avenue? Because I wasn't set on just going in, to college or university right away and spending a bunch of money on something that I really didn't know that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I was researching kind of hard that year and with my parents as well, trying to get ideas. But I knew I wanted to do something, that was fun, do something that was, outgoing, adventurous, that was far away from my family, so to speak, so I could have, my own life and my own responsibility as a young adult. So I landed on helicopters, and that was kind of, the first turning point of this whole situation. So I flew out to Vancouver at 18 to learn how to fly helicopters and get my commercial helicopter pilot's license. So that alone cost me about $50,000 Canadian. And
Oof.
after that, I couldn't find a job. Like you kind of mentioned already, I had 100 hours, but they wanted 1,000
Yeah.
or 1,500 or 2,000. And that's just due to liability. That's due to risk. That's due to, the companies, wanting to manage everything properly, so there's not an incident or an accident. And a year kind of when I moved out there and I couldn't find a job, I was maxed out credit cards, $55,000 in debt. All my, student loans were to the max. And I couldn't find a job.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a similar situation, to a lot of people out there. They'll go to school, they'll do something, but they still can't find that job after they get, that certification or that degree. And it was really frustrating. So kind of at the lowest point that I had was when I was, 18 on 19, and I was maxed out debt, and I literally I couldn't make it work. I couldn't find a job. I was struggling kind of to survive. And it came to a point where I really needed to rethink what I was doing to some degree, because I didn't have any money and I couldn't pay for rent. I couldn't pay for bills. I couldn't, at one point put food on the table. So, I had to make a very hard, tough phone call to mom and dad and say hey, I'm in this kind of tough situation. Do you think you'd be able to float me some money for a month so I can figure out, how I'm going to survive or what I'm going to do? And what came from kind of that low, unfortunately, was, one of the biggest failures I've had. And that was I needed to pivot and go from Vancouver and move back in with my parents in Barrie, Ontario. And that was kind of one of the biggest blows, to my ego, myself, because now I made this massive journey with high hopes and dreams, and it was all just coming crumbling down.
Yeah, you're in your 30s now. I think that's what we heard the last time I talked to you, and married. Congratulations. Everybody, teaching moment on the show here. So you're listening to Chris, and he's listened to the way this guy talks. And one of the things that we know is in the business world, particularly, many business leaders don't understand what the word vulnerability means. And when I ask this question of them, when I coach them, is it a strength or weakness? And remarkably, 90% of them say it's a weakness when they finally understand what it is. Vulnerability is opening yourself up, everyone, to basically showing maybe something people might think is weakness. It could be as simple, Chris, as posting a picture of your favorite cat on social media with you giving it a hug, and risking some guy will say you're a wimp. But you just told us you failed, and that's what I love about your story, and why everyone, if you need a good coach on your career, especially the next gens, you find a coach that can say, these were my setbacks. That's why you're on this show, and why others don't come on it, because it's through those that we learn. So I'm just going to read one more thing here at the end of that nice paragraph or so you sent me. And he said, I never felt uncomfortable with pressures or anything else regarding what I should do with my life. My parents were happy as long as I followed my path and did what I loved. They always told me to do my best at whatever I was doing, and I had to accept and be happy with the result as long as I gave it my all. Here's the thing, and I'll give it back to you on that. You are unique. I mean, at least I haven't come across too many who have that kind of story, because how many of us, everyone grow up with our being, I always say that you're not who you think you are, because we have parents who tell us you got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer, you got to do this. And then our brain, because it doesn't rationalize, thinks I'm not loved unless I do those things. And we go into life and we have all this messed up. So I think one of the things I really like is you seem to be able to do the things you want to do. So tell us why you went back home now, but something kept you on that trail, on that journey to do what you're going to tell us about soon. You didn't get kicked off your path, right? You just got up and kept going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So when I moved home, the intention the whole time, throughout my idea, my head, my destination was still to get into aviation, was still to fly helicopters, was still to get in that door that, didn't open for me right now, but I knew it was going to open. I just needed a new idea. I needed to pivot. I needed to change. I needed to make an adjustment. So I knew that the entire time when I flew home. So I actually had to go back working at the hardware store where I worked during, my high school career, so to speak, which was a tough blow, because now you go back and it's, oh, Chris, why are you back? And oh, this didn't work out. And you have to answer all these uncomfortable questions to all these people that hopefully were rooting for you, but you just don't really know, in life. So I still had my eyes on the goal all the time. And I knew, I just needed something else. So again, I took another year to, save as much money as possible and to stay with my parents rent free. Thank you, mom and dad. And to kind of get back on my feet. And I came up with another idea is, okay, so I need to get in the industry. It might not be flying right now, but I need something. And what led me there was aircraft maintenance.
Yeah.
So I found a program at BCIT located in Richmond, British Columbia, and I got in and then accepted to become an AME, so an aircraft maintenance engineer, as it's called in Canada. And so I flew back out to Vancouver, back to pursue the dream, back kind of on path and on target. And it was, a 4-year program, a year and a half, application in school, 2.5-year apprenticeship. So by no means was this a quick 3-month or 6-month, investment. I was kind of going in this for the long term, investing in myself, investing in, my career in terms of, my skills and what I was learning. And I knew eventually I was going to, fly helicopters. Eventually I would get back on that path. But what I had to do now was something totally different than I thought maybe a year ago, but I knew it was still getting me to the same end target.
Yeah, there's so much. You can see I write down some things on my paper as you're talking, and I just this whirly bird thing. It sent me on a journey in my head. I just got to go there, and then I want to talk about the hardware store. That's how. I mean, we're storytelling, right? That's what this show's about. When I grew up as a kid, and I didn't come from a great home because it was kind of toxic, but I remember Christmas. And this may date you because there was something called the Sears Christmas Wish Book, and they would come every year, and you couldn't wait till it was here. And it's like, oh, the Wish Book's here, and the front had pictures of Santa. But you flip through, and like a kid in a candy store, you kind of pointed to mom, I like that, and then they would order it through Sears, and it would get shipped out. There was no Amazon that back then, and so my favorite thing was called Whirlybird. It was actually a helicopter. And it had a little battery pack, and it had this arm on it, and then it had the controls, and as you accelerated it, it actually went up. It had a little hook under it, so it came with this mat, and you could set up a little city and a gas station, and you would have to go pick things up. So I think maybe it's a little bit my dad's influence, but I was always interested in helicopters. I remember going to Hawaii, and actually they landing on top of a volcano, and these helicopters blew Hawaii. They're pretty amazing, amazing things. And yeah, so it's fascinating, that part of the story. The other one about the hardware store, I should have had my Saturday Night Fever music here. John Travolta, if you ever know that show. Vinnie Barbarino or whatever his name was in the show. He was working at the hardware store, and his dad was telling him to get a life and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know why, but every time I hear hardware store, I just have it gets me all excited. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because when I get bored, I go wander around Home Depot and I just walk through the aisles and I come home with stuff. My wife goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'll figure out a project that I can use these things." Oh my goodness. Let's get back on track here. So there you are. So now we're at the point of the story, everyone, where Chris has gone back home. And by the way, as I said, not everybody has that option. So this is another story that we'll have you back to talk about what do guys like me do. And I did the same thing you did, but I ended up finding somebody else. And so so the options are there in different ways. So you're back home, and so tell us from that point. Let's get into, okay, you're on this track. You're not being knocked off your path because deeply you have this burning desire to want to do what you're doing now. I believe it comes from a deep-seated passion or something about your guy likes to have fun, but you like to help people. Your mom was a teacher. There's this thread, and you kind of figured out early in life, it sounds like, Chris, that unless you're having fun in life, what's life all about? Particularly from a mental health point of view, people who have fun actually are more mentally strong. So now take us into the story. We're in that middle part where now you've created this thing. So tell us about it. It's coaching. You've written a couple books. Hold those up. Show us that too.
Yeah. So in 2020, here, I'll show you the books quick.
Yeah, I'm going to full screen you. So hold on.
Optimal Wealth, Optimal Health.
Nice.
And in 2020, I basically started launching all these projects. It was kind of getting out of my aviation career, which I, was very successful in after, 8 to 10 years around that in maintenance specifically. And I wanted to get out of that. I wanted to do something else because, I was at the top of the industry, so to speak. I was having trouble making more money. I was kind of in a negative environment with, the people there. And I didn't like having, being told what to do, everything, even though it wasn't, the right thing to do, or I thought there was a different way or a better way or a more efficient way of doing it. I didn't really like the idea of that. So in the back of my mind for a few years prior to that, around 2017, 2018, I knew I wanted to do something else. I knew I didn't want to pursue, aviation for the next 20, 25 years and beyond. So I needed to figure something else out. And one of the things was I wanted to start a business, and I wanted to start an online business where I could work from a laptop, I could work from a computer, and I could be mobile. I could, create what I wanted. I could help people with that. And so as of 2020, I started building this coaching business, and it started morphing and taking, shape over 2020, 2021. And 2022 is when I finally, made a full leap where I quit my job, full time, and I jumped in full time to running my own business. So what I do now is I help young professionals to leave the job they hate and transition to a career they love. So many people are dissatisfied with the work they do. So many people hate Mondays and love Fridays, and they live for the weekends because they don't enjoy their 9 to 5. They're strapped with mortgage payments. They're strapped with debt. And I don't really believe that life is meant to be lived, average like this. It's meant to be lived of just going with it and accepting what the norm is. It should be something bigger than that. So I'm very passionate about helping people get out of those situations, or pursue a career they're passionate about to help them, not only do better work, but to get paid more money in the end, which is great.
Yeah, I just love that. And again, a teaching moment, everybody. There's my I was looking at Chris here as he's talking, observing, and he noticed something. Most guests who come on the show don't stand up. Chris has got a lot of things figured out. So he's standing up as a public professional speaker myself. You're speaking from your diaphragm. You're orating properly. We can see you. That's awesome. The thing about, I'm just going to go here for a minute, that it comes back to what I said about the human brain. I'm just telling you what I know, not that you have to believe it. I just want your thoughts. Is that when I was in the corporate sector and we would hire people, and I started hiring people. I think I've hired hundreds of people over my career. And you look at the resume and you see degree, but it's got nothing to do with what my company's doing. And when I started studying neuroscience, Chris, I started realizing that why the hell do I hate my job so much, and why am I even here? I started out of high school as a part-time bank teller, and then went into become a manager and a loans officer, and then I got into senior work. But I don't even know why I got there. And I started thinking, my dad was planting seeds. what I should do. I had teachers in school who influenced me and said, when I asked the question, what should, well, you're pretty good at business. You should go into business. But nobody ever asked me, when you were a child, what were you doing to have fun? And this is what I see and why I like, when I look at the profiles for the show, I always look for what does he do in his spare time? And you see the snowboarding and all that stuff. If you ask me, what do I do for fun? Most people never ask me that. I love to cook, and I actually create food. I have a channel, Instagram, but I create foods that tell stories. And so I love to do that. I love to write. I love to perform. I love being in front of them. And video editing is like totally, I could spend hours in my studio doing that. But
Yeah.
if I sat in a chair as a CEO or a business leader, no, you'd never know that. So I'm getting to a point here. I met a guy once who was totally hating his job. He was running a business, and he was in his 60s. And we had this long conversation, Chris, and I said, why don't you ever do anything fun? He said, well, I said, what would you do? Go back to your childhood. And in the first 9 years, usually the clues are there. He said, well, I was painting. I said, well, what happened? Chris, it turns out his first painting he did, he gave it to his dad. His dad looked at it and threw it back at him and said, don't waste your time. And those little seeds, there's a lot of people I'm sure you're going to be coaching that they don't know, but they're unconscious threads. Somebody's like a teacher said, you'll never be this, you're not good enough. And so you go in life. So anyway, I unraveled that for him. And what happened was he started leaving the office at like 3 p.m. Friday, going into this paint studio and throwing paint on a wall. And he does abstract. You know what he does today? I went for a tour of his office. I had him on my show, actually. I can send you that. I went to his office, and when you walk in the boardroom and everywhere is his art. And he has a studio now where he displays it, and he sold one piece for 15 grand. And I'm going like,
Wow.
and then the guy creates socks with he's got images, little squares of the paintings on it. And I said, how does it feel to come to work? He said, it feels like I'm having my passion at work. So
Yeah.
I know I'm rambling on that story because I want to put it back to you and ask you this. Is it possible that we could hate our jobs sometimes too, but if we can infuse our passion and what we love to do into something, because not everybody has the option to give up the job, infuse the passion in it, but then work with a guy like you to slowly transition to that next thing. I don't know. Am I lost there? Just tell me what you think.
No, yeah, you're definitely getting somewhere there, Tom. So what I kind of like to implement, with a lot of the clients and people I work with is, it's not really an option for most people to just quit the job, to burn the boats, to cut it off at the head, so to speak,
Yeah.
and to not make an income. Because, I mean, let's be honest, most people are in debt. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. And most people don't have the financial cushion to, be 6 months of an emergency fund, in cash or something where will give them
Yeah.
enough time to kind of start figuring it out. So what I like to implement in this exact example is, okay, you're working, 40 hours a week and 9 to 5 in a typical, work week. Well, you want to do this though, or you want to be a photographer, or you want to do this other thing you told me. Well, why don't we just build this on the side? And why don't we launch these side projects or
The side
experiments, I
hustle.
like to call them. Yeah, where, you'll work on this, project for 2 weeks and have a 2 week time limit, and you'll build out something, you'll test it in the market, you'll see if you even like it, because that gives you feedback back right away into what you're doing. So it's different from, doing research and finding out information online to actually trying, to shoot photos and to sell them, or to find people to brand, your photography to. It's a total different beast when it comes to that, in terms of the feedback you receive, what you learn, and what you can grow from that. So I always kind of, guide these people and help these people to, see, well, we can do this on weekends. We can do this on nights. Like, you have the power and the time. Is it going to be difficult? Yes, absolutely. Right. Are you going to be tired? Yes. But I mean, if this is the way you want to go and you want to transition more smoothly than just chopping, the job right away, that's the best way I know how to do it.
That everybody teaching moment right there. Don't burn your boat. And lived experience. I was a paid executive, and I burned my boat, and it was the worst thing I ever did, because I starting a consulting business. Thought, oh, I'll just go out, and man, I crashed. The cash flow was a challenge, and I had a mentor actually before I met you who said exactly what you said. He said, Tom, he said, you can do a side hustle, but don't quit your job. and then eventually build that thing. So I really like that. Let's get into one of your passions. So you're a coach to others, and you can tell us a bit about that. But I chose to talk about one of your books today, which is the one on wealth, and here's why. And by the way, everybody, I'm just saying that I read Chris's book. I listened to the audiobook, which is awesome, and I will announce now that I'm going to do a 5-star review on it for you. It'll be done probably by tomorrow. And everybody,
Awesome.
you got to get this book. You got to read it. But how authors get known, because we're not known, is to go there it is. We'll full screen that. Everybody get the book and then put a review on Goodreads.com and Amazon, wherever you are. Thanks, Chris. And that helps Chris's work get known. And then the stores, they take notice of the book as well. We're going to listen to something here. So let me just add it to the stream, Chris. Okay, everybody, this will be a couple minutes. We're going to listen to this and then talk about it with Chris. So that's the book, Optimal Wealth. Whoops. Let me, I have to go and actually find where the little control is. Hold on a sec, Chris. That's why we're live streaming, everyone, because when you're live streaming, you get all the bloopers and all the fun things that happen. All right. And Chris, while I'm doing that, just tell us how long it took you to write the book and why you wrote it.
Yeah, so I ended up writing 2 books in 2020. The first one was Optimal Health. The second one was Optimal Wealth. And I wanted to just launch a creative product. I wanted to do something out of my comfort zone. I wanted to try something new. I didn't really see myself as a writer by any means or being a strong suit, but I had a lot of valuable experiences in these 2 fields, with working out as well as with money management in my own life, where I made some massive changes that I wanted to put it into a book to give back to people, to use simple yet actionable steps to help them change these things in their lives.
All right, fascinating. Okay, I found it in the studio here, but you get to see the bloopers. That's why we do this. I did, as I said, I read it or I listened to it, and the thing that I love about the structure of the book is the chapters aren't big. They're easy to read. They're packed with information. There's a theme on each chapter. And then at the end, there's a really cool thing. There's you can tell us about it, but there's a few nuggets at the end. But I'm going to let us listen to this. This is chapter 13. It's called The End. And so here we go, about a couple minutes.
Chapter 13, The End. How much is enough? It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more.
All right, I'm going to stop there. How much is enough? That is such a powerful phrase. And before I tell you why it jumps out of me, just talk about that one little sentence. Why did you write that?
Yeah, so in terms of, how much is enough is really, really important, especially in this day and age, because we live in a more mentality in everything. I'm not successful unless I'm making more money. I'm not successful unless I own a bigger house, a better car, a brand name clothes. And we get sucked into, what the media is selling us, which is there's never enough and we can never have enough, which is a very tricky mindset, because if you get in that mindset of scarcity and that there's never enough, that actually shifts a lot of your thinking, your mindset with your money, and your mindset with how you live your life, and really not being able to be grateful for everything you have.
Yeah, we'll continue listening to the clip, but everybody, teaching moment there. Write that down on your paper. When is enough enough? And it's a question that's why this jumped out of me, Chris. I didn't realize you are on that. It's a question I ask when I'm talking to some of my peers, and they're high performing, big salaries, big homes, and constantly guys got a boat and this. And I'm going like, dude, when is enough enough? And then I was baptized a Catholic, and I found my faith when I had my brain injury a few years ago, because I didn't have much to do for hope. And the idolatry, they call it, that is basically defining. I used to define myself, Chris, and I thank you for teaching us this, on how much stuff I had. And I remember saying, a quality of life is not equal to a quantity of stuff. But that all comes back to, and there's a whole other talk I can do with you to get you to tell me about me. That goes back to my childhood, where I was picked on and told by, even in my own home, I wasn't enough, and because of a toxic family. And that stayed with me. So I remember getting promotions at work, and then when I got a bonus, I'd go buy some stuff, and then that feeling, the dopamine release, it's like, yeah. And then the car, wow, this is nice Lexus and whatever. And then next day, where'd that feeling go? And a lot of that I've been studying is in the reward system in the brain, and so we can get addicted. I guess that's what you're helping me share with our audience. A lot of people, everyone who don't know where the line is, it's because they're seeking something because they're not satisfied in themselves with who they are, and they're looking for something outside, and they don't know where enough is enough. Let's keep listening here.
That is poor. Seneca, how much is enough? In the world we live in, more is better. Bigger is better. There is never a finish line, and never enough money, cars, power, wealth, or whatever. Expressing gratitude daily is a huge step in the right direction to feeling great about what you already have. Each morning, I write a list of things I'm grateful for. It could be money, health, the beautiful sunset, the roof over your head, clean water, food, family, friends, partner, or to be alive. It does not have to specifically relate to money. Even though the journey for wealth or freedom may never end, you need to understand how to be thankful now. If you earn much more than you spend each month while being able to live a fantastic lifestyle, do you need more? Maybe not. But that is not for me to decide. It's up to you.
All right, tell us about that. Those are your words, man. Writing this list, and tell us about that.
Yeah. So again, everyone wants, more of everything. And I've, realized there's a balance, and there's actually a number. It's around $70,000, where once you make over $70,000, typically for the average person, you don't get more, you don't gain more happiness from that. So it doesn't matter if you're making 150, 250, 350, 450, or 85 grand, you kind of just feel the same in terms of, what you're gaining from it, so to speak, in most cases scenarios. So I've actually found that, living a better life doesn't always involve more money. Yes, you do need money to do certain things, have certain experiences, absolutely, but you need a lot less than you think. And I think that's the kicker that most people don't
Yeah.
understand.
And we'll just listen to one more minute of this, and then we'll close that off and talk about the book without that.
People who earn around $100,000 can live fantastic lifestyles. You do not need this much, but it will give you the freedom to do fun things and enjoy more out of life. Obviously, if you have a family and kids to look after, you will need more to achieve this type of lifestyle. So many people struggle to make ends meet each day, week, and month all over the world. Would it be worth using your resources and money to help others who are less fortunate to live a better life? If you get caught up in the never-ending chase of riches, you may never be happy or satisfied. Money and success. Many people like to use the amount of money they have as a way of tracking their success. As they earn more and more, they can see that they have succeeded. This can be used as a measurement to see where you have come from and where you are now, although you do not want to get caught up in the trap of more money equals more success.
More money equals more success, a trap. That's pretty insightful. And isn't it kind of how the workplace is set up? Like you're a frontline worker, and then you're a supervisor, then you're a manager, then you're a VP, a director, and then they show you the pay scales, and whoa, that person's more valuable than me. So it's like the only way, if you want to increase your success, as you've been saying in that audio, if you want to increase your success, it means you can't do that without having more money, and then the brain starts thinking about, and it gets wired in. So if you're somebody who's stuck like that, give us a couple of thoughts about where do you start with clients to unravel some of these belief systems about wealth as it relates to their life.
So in terms of wealth, I mean, it all comes, like I said in one of those clips, from a place of abundance. And that's a place of, it starts with gratitude. So you always want to come from, an abundance mindset. There's more than enough to go around. There's more than enough money to make. There's more than enough time, to make money. As, right around us right now, there's literally trillions of dollars being transferred with transactions globally, right? So there's literally money flying around, the network right now that is available to earn. And of course, I'm not saying it's super easy to make money. As I'm sure some of you have struggled with this, but it's about coming from that mindset of, shifting from a scarcity mindset of there's not enough, I need to make more, to that abundance mindset of, what, I actually am super happy with the money I make. I'd like to earn more, and I want to do these different skills or have this side hustle to help me earn a bit more money so I can increase my savings or I can pay off that debt. And I think in terms of the success portion versus, finances versus success, is so many people, and I mean, we're taught this, and we kind of believe this early on. I think most people is that the more money you make, the higher your success is. And it seems like the financial part of each job, career, and what you're doing for work seems to be, oh, well, you're not successful, or I'm not successful until I make this much, or I'm not successful, until I make six figures, or something like that. But these are just literally made up things that we're led to believe. And
Totally.
that's one of the reasons, I wanted to write this book too, is it's not just about, optimal wealth isn't just financial wealth. And if you pick up the book and read it, you'll see that there's many different forms of wealth, whether it could be, time and freedom, whether it's, quality time with family and friends, whether it's being able to give back to others and to help others. So there's all these different avenues of wealth where finances are a part of it, but a smaller part of that success than most people are led to believe.
Thank you. There's so much I want to say to you, and it could double the time with you. As you were talking, there are a few things that I have written down here. One is about the definition of wealth, and then another thing that came to my mind when you were talking is, where does the definition come from when you're a child growing up into a youth to an adult? And I just share with you a little example that when my father-in-law grew up herding sheep on the mountainside in Italy. My wife's Italian, great guy, and he passed a few years ago, but he lived a long time, and he worked for the pickle plant in Allies in Vancouver. But he grew up in the Depression, and so I sat around the table every weekend having dinner, and I was kind of his pal, so we would drink some brandy and he'd talk. And a commercial come on TV where it's like a commercial about Christmas, and he'd say like, "What a bunch of shit. We didn't have," and he said, "We had an orange. That was the toy they had." And he had a view, not a negative view of judging people, but a view that people had money were different. Yeah. And so I started observing just the family as it grew up, and I noticed that Anna's got some siblings and very frugal, very not going to spend money because it might be the last one we have. And then there's in my life where I grew up, and my dad was a spendthrift because he drank a lot. He was taught at BCIT, by the way, where you talked about going to school. And I was scared to death because the family was always running out of money because of his habits, that I worked from a young age. And by the time I moved out of home, I had like $2,000 in a bank account, which today would be like 10. And I was able to fully furnish my apartment and stuff. And I remember my dad, because he used to get mad at me. He always thought I was selfish. He said to my mom, "Tommy's doing pretty good," because I would stash my money away. But I was I was a frugal guy. And so I started thinking about the definition of money. How come I grew up where there was no money, where I was running out? And how come I have those habits? And so somewhere in your book, everybody, and hold up the book again there, Chris. We're talking to Chris Wilson, the author of Optimal Health and Optimal Wealth. Today we're talking about Optimal Wealth. Great book. Thanks, Chris. You got to get it. You got to give it a review, please. And I'll be posting a review for that for you too, Chris. As I said, that this thing, I've heard some people somewhere in your book or in the audio say something about the relationship with money. Just talk for a minute about that.
Yeah, so kind of like you touched on already, with your dad and your stepdad, or your father-in-law.
Yeah, my
right?
father-in-law.
Their relationship with money. And it's funny because your relationship with money is really the number one most important thing to how you control, how you manage, how you deal with all your finances. And it comes from your mindset of, do you see money as good, or do you see money as bad? And what are your beliefs around money? So there's actually another book that I'll recommend here called Happy Money by Ken Honda. And that is about kind of understanding and creating, a happy relationship with money. Because when you have that relationship, now instead of you seeing it, oh, I'm giving away all this money, or I have to pay for these car repairs and this is so bad, you start saying, oh, I'm going to buy this because this is going to help, bring me more money, or I'm going to invest in this, or I'm going to give this certain amount of money away this week because that's going to help someone else, which in turn is going to help me in one way or another. So the relationship is really very critical. And then once you kind of form that relationship, which will take time and habits and
Yeah.
effort, then you can kind of start going in the more technical aspects of, actually creating a budget, living below your means, and various other techniques I talk about in the book.
Yeah, thanks. That's such a great learning, teaching moment. Everybody on the show here, we're talking about optimal wealth, and in the book itself is many strategies, even simple things like I'm a banker. Part of my career was banking, so I was a loan officer, and I remember Chris, because I was downtown in Vancouver, most of the guys coming in to borrow money were airline pilots, accountants, lawyers, doctors, high priced people, and they were leveraged like crazy with debt, and they're in their later years. And I don't remember my daughter coming home from school and saying, "Hey, today we had somebody mentor and coach us on how to just put a little bit of money away every month." And the rule of 72 compounding. If I had done that myself, Chris, I would be sitting on easily of close to $1 million. But we just don't teach that. The other part I thought about when you were talking about your credit or your debt, you had credit cards too, right?
Yeah.
Is how does somebody, and my wife's a career banker too. That's where I met her. I'm not in that profession anymore, but I used to get angry at how easy it was. Like water, the financial institutions sent out credit cards to youth. It's like how, here's a new limit. You've been good. You've been racking it up, so we'll give you another 1,000. Man, and my daughter's got one, and then she's a student in university back east, and all of a sudden I'm learning, Dad, she's into the interest rate and she can't pay it off. It's crazy. So this book that we're talking about, Optimal Wealth, that Chris has written, everyone, he's written it based on his story of being in debt high as a young fella and then coming out of debt. You got to get it because there's some nuggets in it. There was another book recommended in there about something about the soul. What was that?
Yeah, The Soul of Money. That's by, I believe, Lynn Twist. And that's about coming from, this place of gratitude, and that, more is never better, or more is never, if you're always striving for more, then basically you're going to have a lack of always. Where if you come from a place of, oh, I have enough and I'm thankful that I have this, then more is a bonus, but you don't feel so empty. You feel more complete with what you have.
That's very cool. And I have a gratitude journal, and I love it that you're teaching that. And what it does for me is after a while journaling and just writing 3 things I'm grateful for each morning, I started noticing that, Chris said, I started noticing more of what I have than what I don't.
Exactly.
And it's really what people don't understand about it. I'm a bit geeky about neuroscience. It's the reorganizing the brain's neuron patterns to start noticing and being in that process of thinking. What am I grateful for? Oh, I got to think about 3 things today, and then I got to do it tomorrow. And all of a sudden you're like, I'll walk out the door sometimes and I'll be with a friend and I play with their head, and I can't do it with you now because you're too smart, but I'm walking out and I'm going like, what are 3 things you're grateful for? And they're stuck, man.
Yeah.
And then I say, look at nature. There's a million trees and there's birds and there's, oh yeah. And the brain's not used to doing that. It's just used to thinking about what the negative side. We're getting close to the end here. I got a few things I want to honor you with. Give us one more teaching, and let's do this. Finishing up on the wealth piece, it's something that could be interesting. 2 people come together, get married, and they each got a different belief or relationship with money. There's one that I'm sure you can comment if you're coaching people. Does that come up? And number 2, is it possible if somebody has a bad relationship with money? Because I have somebody I know who, and I work for them as a general manager running one of their companies. They were notorious at building up the revenue of the company, but doing things unconsciously to basically almost bankrupt it. And I heard this somewhere before, that if you have an unconscious thought pattern that you don't feel you're worthy of money or it's good, you can actually be saying, hey, I'm building my business, I'm growing it, I have goals. But then these stupid little things you do, like taking money out to go buy $100,000 car, it's actually the unconscious brain. The unconscious brain is taking it away from you because you're self-sabotaging. Any comments on any of that?
Yeah. So in terms of, when you get married, or, your common law, or then you start to amalgamate finances or financial beliefs, it's really important to, first off, be on the same page, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of tension around money with a lot of couples and a lot of people that, creates, a lot of force between them. So I think being open, being honest to talking about money, being honest to having, a plan that aligns with both of your, visions and values and goals of, do we want to buy an apartment or a house or a car or go on that trip, but it'd be more of a together decision and a together as, how do we proceed forward to be the best? Because I feel like, in relationships, and money often has, a bad kind of name that people don't want to talk about it. And people kind of just want to hush it to the side and just leave it as it is and don't talk about the debt and the problems and the issues. But unfortunately, I mean, if we all did that, we would all be strapped in debt with no money to do
Yeah.
anything. So I think it's important to talk about it and be open and honest about it.
Okay. Controversial question. Separate bank accounts if you're married.
Well, I think you can have separate bank accounts, but I think you can also have a joint bank account and
Yeah.
credit card. So I think it depends how you want to run it, but I think it is nice to have your own place where you can pull money, where you can do what you want. That is still as an individual, so to speak. So, I mean, I think best of both worlds.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Learned through experience. My dad sort of had the checkbook. My mom, so when he left home, my mom didn't have a clue, and it was hard on her. And then my wife works for the Royal Bank, and she's an estate specialist, and she deals with people all the time who have just lost a loved one. And the amount of stories, man, that people who are survivors don't know, like the wives or the husbands surviving, they don't know anything. I didn't know where's it's so tough. So
Yeah.
I love what Chris is teaching us there, everybody. You need to get a hold of him, and if you're up and coming in your life career, these are skills our parents probably couldn't teach us because they came from a generation where it was completely different.
Yeah.
One thing, as you were talking about wealth, sometimes, Chris, I have people who are older in their lifeline, maybe 50s or so, and they get stressed out because they're in debt, but they wanted to create more wealth, meaning money, or have a bit of an estate, or, be able to travel and have fun. And they kind of get down about it because they think, well, my career's ending. I'm going to be retiring, and I don't think I can ever get there. Is it possible to create wealth at your later stages? And I'm talking about build an asset base, or, money.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of it's never too late to do anything. But when we do speak about money, it's all about timeline and
Yeah.
it's all about compounding. And what that is over a longer period of time, if you're investing that money and reinvesting that money, the
Yeah.
compound interest builds on itself. So
Gotcha.
it's definitely more difficult when you are in that later stage because now you're going against time, which time is the best way to build money. So I
Yeah.
don't want to say, oh no, it's not possible, but then you have to get creative of, okay, I only have this one income stream, from my job. How can I make maybe multiple income streams? Is this through investing? Is this through, like we were talking before, maybe a little side business, online? Is
That's
this
right.
through, doing something else in the city that I can do? So there's other ways I think to get back on track with the finances. But unfortunately, the timeline in that compounding is going to affect you because now instead of a 20, 30, 40-year potential timeline of, building this compound interest and really making a lot more money, you might only be dealing with, 20 years or 15 years or 10 years with whatever your goals are.
Yeah, thank you for all that. Well, talk about more teaching moments, everyone, from Chris, the author of Optimal Wealth. I was just thinking again, this is so many threads that come out of this topic. You get, then you look at the divorce rates, right? And you look at the number of people who get divorced, and then all of a sudden you're dividing everything, and it's like that master plan crap. It now, I'm starting over. Have
Yeah.
you ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad, Kiyosaki? Rob? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one on my list for sure.
Yeah, funny thing is when I burned my boat about being a paid executive, I remember, and I think I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, Chris. I just was misplaced working for someone building their dream.
Mhm.
And I remember Kiyosaki, he did some work called the cash flow quadrant,
Okay,
and yeah, and there's four. If I drew it out, and you know it. I'm just doing this for the audience sake. There's four quadrants on it. One is job, one is self-employed, one is investing, and the other one is build a business. And then he basically said, what are the two quadrants that you can create wealth in? And the only two that he identified were build a business or investing. Because and that's what I did when I started my own platform, which everyone, you need to go and spend time with Chris because he's created this amazing business platform. If you build a business that has processes, systems, and it generates money when you sleep, like you've got your book and you've got other streams and things you do of income, that's how you can get ahead fast if you can find a way to do that side hustle, build it. So I really believe in what you're teaching us. The investment thing scares me. I wrote about this in my book, Chris, and we were victims of a Ponzi scheme 15 years ago, and it was horrible. And I'll get into it another time with you. And my dad lost like $100,000 from his RSP to Bernie Madoff, this Yahoo in the U.S. You have investing now where we're starting to learn that world events are impacting the investment community, like the bubble of the housing bubble, that because of the subprime mortgage crisis that was really created on Wall Street, trillions wiped off the map, and then you have now the war that's going on in Europe, and that's trickling down, having an effect on investments and things, and then you have that weird period where, God, man, when I got my first car, I think I was 16 years old. My dad took me to the Delta credit union and he said, okay, son, you want a car? Sign that loan paper. And my dad signed a loan for $4,500 at 21% interest. Now, I don't know why I always remember my payment was $181.65 a month, but I paid it off. And I had this little red Chevette. And all the guys had like Mustangs. I had a crappy Chevy Chevette. I stuck $1,000 Alpine stereo in there with the big box speakers so I could play my Iron Maiden music. And I had it stolen 3 times, but I was still rebuying it. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent here, but the point is that I want your opinion on this. I read somewhere, and I think it's true, that the next generations coming up, they don't see money the same way. They don't want to borrow and get in debt. They saw their parents get laid off in corporate America, not look after them. They saw their parents, working 2-3 jobs because, they built their wealth, and then the recession or something happened and it just wiped off that. So I think we'll wrap up on this point. You've taught us so much with the book Optimal Wealth about strategies. And so in all of that, what's your last piece of advice for people who are listening to us today? They're in the 20-somethings to 30-somethings age group, about the number one thing that they should do to start getting it together for creating wealth, whatever that is.
Yeah. So the number one thing I can say with creating wealth and, with your finances for young adults is you have to have that financial intelligence, which means know how much you're spending. So you have a budget, how much you're earning, and always live below your means. So if you can do this and you can track everything that's coming in, track everything that's going out, it's going to take a little bit of time, but trust me, it will pay off, 10 times down the road. And the way I like to do this is through apps. So obviously apps on our phones are very valuable now. So I use something called Every Dollar, and this is by Dave Ramsey, which is a big financial guy in the US. And it's a free app. You don't have to pay anything for it. There's also another app called YNAB, YNAB, which is basically just a competitor to Every Dollar. Both will work for you, but you need to know what's coming in versus what's going out.
That's really cool. Yeah, Ramsey, I'm a fan of his too. Everybody, if you want something sobering to watch, go watch him, because he doesn't pull punches, right? He just punches. He just tells you. I love it. I've written those 2 apps down. So Every Dollar and YNAB, YNAB.
Yeah, YNAB. Yep.
Yeah. And just again, the books that you recommended: Happy Money by Ken Honda, The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. And most importantly, Optimal Wealth by Michael Wilson. There it is. And yeah, the other book he wrote was Optimal Health, and so I highly recommend that one. We'll have you back on that one too. Thanks, Chris. The reason why I chose wealth today is I thought there's so much out there talking about health, but the biggest crisis we're in now, young people can't even go out and buy groceries. I go buy a bag of groceries, it's $100, right? By the way, tip from me, stay at home and eat more. You can save a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to honor you with a few things. So let me just put something on the screen here. You've been so great. We're right where we are at the hour. Everybody can see the studio here. I have a piece of paper. I write down leadership words as I'm interviewing. They're not scripted. Chris and I never really met before and talked about this show. The first one is mentor. Awesome. You are a mentor. And a mentor, everybody, is different than a coach. He is a coach, but a mentor has lived experience that can actually tell you what he's done. Coaches really can't. They just help you find the way. 2, you're inspirational. Everything from standing up, great presence. But I am blown away by how you've at your young age, they say the difference between knowledge and wisdom is time. And at the age you're at in your 30s, you've got so much your inspiration. Number 3 is communicator. Awesome communicator. He's a Toastmaster, and he does some great speaking. We'll let you plug your event coming up. And 4 is that wisdom, and so much there. So the last thing I want to do is show everybody a screen that's behind me. So you see that screen that's behind me there, Chris? If I full screen myself, there's a picture, a round image on the screen.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. Well, we're getting an award. You're getting an award today, and that is a challenge coin. And challenge coins were created in World War I. When I started the show, I said I want to have an award because there's only a small percentage of people who can make it on the show, check their egos, talk about the real truth. And the front of it's hand minted and crafted, and the front of it's raised letters. The back is the hero's journey narrative from Joe Campbell, who is all about that journey we have seeking. So welcome to the Quiet Warrior Tribe. You're going to get one of these.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll get a photo op, take you somewhere and do that. I'll give them a little bit of a fireworks here if you're not watching us, but we just put some fireworks up. There are about 200 and almost 260 people have come through my studio, Chris. And so what's exciting is, man, when you carry that coin and like first responders, fire, all sorts of people have these. It started but in the Army, that all around the world, there's people who have them, and you're connected to all those people. You'll probably meet some of them sometime. People like you change the world. So last word to you before we let you go. Where do they get a hold of you? What's your website's on the screen, but for coaching and all, just tell us anything.
Yeah, so to get a hold of me, to connect with me, chrismwilson.com. If you want to work with me, you can go to chrismwilson.com/coaching. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at I am Chris M. Wilson. Feel free to shoot me a message, connect with me anytime, and I look forward to meeting everyone.
Fantastic. Oh, and get on his newsletter. I just signed up and I got my first, hey, let me tell you really who I am. I love it. All right, everybody, live life with passion like you see Chris M. Wilson do. Live that life that you deserve and desire. And we'll see you again on the Quiet Warrior Show. Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right. And I just put the wrong bumper music on. See, that's why we do this live and we're in the studio. So just hold on. We're gonna pretend here. All right, I'm gonna play with you because I'll edit this out. But do you want to hear the bumper music I created about a year ago for a special segment I'm gonna do on my show?
Sure. Yeah.
It's called the Heavy Mental Health Show. And so here's the bumper music. Anyway, I'm trying to portray what it's like in somebody's head when they're anxious and going through all the shit I went through after my injury. So just hang on, let me play it.
Welcome to the Heavy Mental Health Show. And now, here to help teach leaders how to lift the stigma of mental health, your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Oh my God. Did you hear the primal scream?
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah. So the outro won't play, but the idea of that one is it'll be like you're coming into the show and you're mentally stressed out just from a day. And then the bumper at the end is like it's calming, right? You get this calming kind of thing. Anyway, thanks a lot for being on the show, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.